Welcome to the White Sox Recap Podcast. I am Ryan McGuffey. We have a real treat for you today. The legend, the captain, number 14, number one in your hearts, Paul Konerko, on his 49th birthday here on the White Sox Recap Podcast with me and B.A. Brian Anderson. We walked down memory lane. It's been 11 years since Paul Konerko retired, and of course, 20 since that memorable 2005 White Sox World Series run. We go through the highs of that season. We talk about the low point, the 2003 season of Paul Konerko's career, and how it took off from there when Greg Walker took over as hitting coach. Plus his thoughts on Mark Buehrle getting his own statue on July 11th, and how hard it is for him to watch the White Sox in 2025. Plus, if he were a free agent today, what would his contract look like? Always thinking, always a businessman. The legend himself, Paul Konerko, on his birthday. Happy birthday to the captain here on the White Sox Recap Podcast, and it starts right now. Joining us now on the White Sox Recap Podcast. I'm not sure he really needs an introduction, especially to White Sox fans, but I'll do it anyway. 2005 World Series here. The guy's got a statue on the concourse, his number retired. It's the birthday boy, Paul Konerko. What a gift that we've given you, an invitation to come on the White Sox Recap Podcast on your birthday, and you accepted.
All my dreams have come true. My birthday wishes. The big 49 today. It's hard to believe, and but one year away from obviously the big one, the 5-0. But the good news for me is that I felt kind of like 49 when I was like 32. So I've kind of just stayed right there.
Hey, you know what I specifically remember about your 40th is we had met up to like work out or something a few weeks after, and you were telling me how great it was. I go, invitation lost in mail. I live down the street.
It probably was lost in the mail,
It's fine.
Well, I was thinking about that too. I was like, man, how is Paul Konerko 49? And I'm like, well, I'm 45, BA. You're knocking on 43 next week? So I'm
a few days behind Paul in March, but a few years behind, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, the point is, God, in some ways, obviously, I'm the guy who didn't play with you, but I was in enough of your clubhouses to understand, like, well, shit, that's how we got here, man. It's been a long time. So, Paul, like, when you think back, and obviously you've been out of the game now, I think this is 11 years since your last season, which even that's kind of hard to believe, probably. Last year, I think we were recording an open with you, voicing an open during the Crosstown Classic, and I looked, you had your kids in the room, and I'm looking, and I'm like, dude, they're giants. And I remember when they were just literally like, newborns. So it goes by in a flash. What as you've kind of taken a step back and been able to get away from the game, have you been able to appreciate the 18 seasons and 439 home runs, or have you just kind of stepped into just being dad and Paul?
Yeah, I mean, well, really both. I mean, once I got out, like you said, this is the start, I think, of the 11th season here. This spring training is the 11th season. I haven't been in it, I haven't been involved in, and I kind of wanted to. As soon as I was done, I was burned out, and I didn't want anything more. No, I had no issues or hard feelings or anything. I mean, everything went as well as it could go for me in terms of, kind of checking off all the boxes and accomplishing what I wanted to accomplish. So but I just wanted to kind of go away. I think I was kind of tired of it all. I think there's probably some people tired of me. And I was like, let me just go away in a hole for a while and not come back. And, the White Sox, of course, were awesome. They were awesome to me the whole time I was there, especially towards the end. And of course, I think you would have wanted me or still want me to maybe do something, and maybe that will happen. But I just kind of wanted to go away and get away from the game and kind of just detox. And when you're doing something like this, since you're like 5 years old, really seriously, since you're probably a teenager, 13, 14, and you retire at 38, you almost need 10 years at least to kind of like get away from it. If that's because I really had no goals of, getting into the media or getting into announcing or it just wasn't, it wasn't my thing. And I don't think it ever will be. And so I if you're not going to do that, then obviously coaching, that's a worse schedule than a player. You know what I mean? They're there earlier and staying later. So when you really kind of dissected it all the way, I was kind of like, none of this, I don't have the heart for any of it. I'm kind of on empty here. And so let me just go away. And now I look up and it's 10, 11 years later. But also, obviously, the other big piece of that is to go home and start to do all the things that you miss while you're playing with your kids. And so it's very hard for me to justify now missing a kid's game, missing a dance recital, missing a school play because I got to go to a game somewhere. So if I don't have to do that, I'm not ready to do that. I don't want to do that. That's kind of where it's at. And I've definitely, it's been good to see like there's a lot more out there in the world than just baseball,
Well, I know as a former teammate too, it's fun to watch Paul, but he's at that sweet spot, especially with the home run total, where if he hangs on for a few more years, he kind of reaches that pinnacle, that 500 home run mark. And one thing I respect about him is, we kind of would mess with him about it. He's like, I'm done. Like, that didn't even cross my mind. I'm out of here. So, it's something to admire, at least as a former teammate, that, when someone's played the game as well as he had and as accomplished as he was, knowing that he's like, hey man, I'm ready to go spend time with my family. That was kind of fun to watch.
Yeah. I mean, you could only be, if in this game, your number is going to get pulled at some point, whether it's, there's kids in high school baseball right now, their number will be pulled here at the end of the year, seniors, and they're done. And then some kids go to junior college or college, and then maybe to the minor leagues, or at some point, everybody's kind of like, the game is, no one's bigger than the game, and the game is going to get you. And so for me, all you can hope is that when it gets you, it kind of coincides with you being cool with it, and, for me at that point, I could see, I always knew like me, kind of like a one-dimensional player, like a hitter, not really providing defense. Yeah, you could talk about intangible stuff or whatever, but let's be honest, when you're talking about a business and what's going on the field, what are you helping to do to deliver, wins and production to that team? I was a one-dimensional kind of asset in that thing. And so the bad news is that when you stop doing that, or you don't have the ability to do that anymore, it happens really fast. Like, you're done. I'm not going to sit there and hang around for 4 or 5 years as a utility player. Okay. So that's the bad news, and kind of good news, because it's very black and white. And also the good news is, if you're a hitter type like I was, like, when it's good, it's good. Not only just that type of, I guess, lifestyle within the game in terms of what you do. You're not diving around into like, tarps in the outfield and diving at short and all that. Like, you hit, you know what I mean? And that's like, the good thing, it pays well, and that helps too. But when it's over and that kind of goes away, you really have no other, things going with it. I always knew that. I was, I had no illusions about, anything beyond that. I knew what the job description was, and it's, if you're not doing that, they're going to replace you with somebody else, and it's time to go. But luckily for me, it kind of happened at the time. I ran it out further enough that even if I was doing it, I was kind of like, all right, maybe I'm done with this anyway. So that's a good place to be,
Yeah, I want to. Obviously, I'm going to talk about 2005, and it's crazy to think that that's been 20 years. But I want to talk about the seasons leading up to that, specifically 03. You're coming off like your kind of breakthrough year of 02. You have the All-Star game, and then 03, like it's just not clicking for you. I remember you were pretty hard on yourself. You're literally one of my favorite guys to ever deal with, because you didn't really love talking about yourself, but you would think you would genuinely think about a question and give a real cerebral answer, usually deflecting attention on yourself and talking about teammates or the team or why it was good for the organization. But 03, I think I'll pull up the line. I mean, not that you need to be reminded, but it was at 234, you had 18 and 65. What did you learn about yourself? Because after that season, it all kind of clicked from there, and you kind of really became Paul Konerko, as everyone and maybe the fans, got to know you. But I don't want to say you bottomed out, but you came from all-star level player, and then you had a really rough spot before 04, 05. What did you learn?
I mean, that's, for me, again, black and white, easy question for me, because, and to give you a better split of that year, I believe at the halfway point or the All-Star break, sometimes that's like a week off and during the season,
Yeah.
I think I was 190, 1-3 and 18. Or 187.
You were 197, 267, 300 slug.
Yeah, something like that. So, but here's where it's at is that, the years leading up to that, really my whole life leading up to that, it's a classic case of production or producing and playing well, whether it's high school, minor leagues, the first even couple of years in the major leagues, which I did have a rough start with the Dodgers and all that. But all of that kind of like hitting in a way and doing it in a way that especially mechanically hitting and all that I didn't know how. I just did it, and it was like, that's a point where you're a young kid and you have your body and you have all your physicality that you are blessed with, whatever that is. You have it all at that moment, and you kind of can overcome a lot of misses. You can do a lot of things, and then you have a little success, and then you kind of the game kind of figures you out, or you have a moment where it just all kind of goes bad. And the big thing there is that, and I joke about this, but it's probably true, is that I'm pretty sure I got Gary Ward, the hitting coach at that time, fired because of my play and my hitting. Who Gary was great. Ward was a great guy and did it in the big leagues for a long time and, knows hitting. But I'm pretty sure I got him fired because of how bad I was. And but that opened the door for Greg Walker to come in. And there's your answer right there. With no question in my mind, the combination of him and Mike Gellinger. Now, to my credit, I listened because I was at a point where I was, rock bottom. And that is, you see a lot of players sometimes that don't want to listen. I always hit this way. I'm going to keep doing it that way. I was at a point where I'm like, I'm up for anything here, man. Like, what do you got? What do you got? And, I remember talking to him in the dugout that right before that All-Star break, right when he got the job. And he said, listen, man, I know what you're doing. I've been out of the game 10 years, kind of like I am right now, and he said, I've been studying this. I always felt like I was a better hitter. I didn't know why. And I went on kind of a search to figure out answers to like, what makes all this tick? And I know, I feel like I have a great handle on it. And I look at you and I know all the ways to fix that. So if you want this, I got it, but you got to dive in for me. You got to like give yourself to me. And also it might get worse before it gets better. And that's not something you want to hear when you're in a $190, 3 months into the season. But I was like, oh, what the hell? Let's try it. So immediately started diving into kind of some things. And it didn't happen right away, but I started to see things myself doing things that I'd never done before in terms of like my work, hitting balls certain ways, just a whole different way to look at things I've never looked at my whole life. And I hit my whole life, So if you look at that moment, everything is traceable back to that from then on. Because even as I sit here today, there's really not anything I think differently about hitting than I learned in the second half of that season. Now there was mental things and approach stuff and all that and psychological things that were layered onto it as it went in the years to come. But from a physical, mechanical point where it has to be the jumping off point for a hitter, you must have a good swing that will work for you at the big league level. That was the moment where it all changed right there.
That's a big, as a teammate who got to watch Paul, it was really fun to watch, but it was frustrating for me too. Cause first and foremost, people ask me all the time, who's the most professional, best hitter you played with? And God, I played with Hall of Famers, and JD's an unbelievable hitter from the right side. But I said, guys, however many base hits Paul Konerko had in his career, 2,000, 2,500, I go, it's most impressive because every single one of those hits reached the outfield. There were no infield singles for him. So those were base hits. And, sitting there, what was frustrating for me as a player was I would sit and watch him be able to kind of absorb this information and put it into something tangible on the field, where someone like myself was like, man, I don't know why I'm doing that. Like, I don't know why I'm spinning off the ball or casting out or barring out, where, real true professional hitters that have a long, consistent career are able to feel that and able to absorb that information and then, put that on the baseball field and carry that over the at-bats, where that's something I really struggled with.
Yeah. I mean, and look, you're a first round pick, BA. So like Paul was saying, I mean, some guys listen and it never clicks, and some guys listen and they figure it out. And, like Paul, I was looking at this earlier. You're one of only 7 White Sox players that have 40 homer season. It's almost been 10 years, by the way, since that's happened, which is hard to believe. Like Todd Frazier, I think was the last one, but only you and Frank have hit back-to-back 40 homer seasons, which to your point about building off that second half, 04 happens, 05 happens, you have 40-40. Is there, you would never talk about this as a player, but now is there like one particular stat when you look at your career as a whole that you're most proud of? Is it games, homers, hits? Is there something that you like, or is it everything as a whole?
I would say, I don't even know if there is a stat for this. I'd say two things. One, it would be, again, I don't know if there's a stat. I mean, nowadays there's a stat for everything, so you can probably take the rest of the day to figure it out. But, however many games I was there, I think I had 2 DL stints. And then, of course, as you're playing through seasons, sometimes you come in, the manager's like, hey, we're going to give you a day today, or it's almost a planned day. But really, if you took the 162 game seasons for the 16 seasons I was there, I would be proud of the fact that I got to believe that I was probably available 98.9% of the time, or something. I don't even know what that number would be, but it's got to be in the high 90s in terms of like I was ready to go every day if needed. So that really is always, looking back, these numbers and these stats and all that kind of stuff, they come, they go, and like, it's like there's always somebody better, there's always somebody worse. It's all about how you played and how you were. And so that's a big one for me, is that I showed, especially nowadays where you have guys that, they think 110 games is a full season, But that would be one. And the other one would just be, I think, not a stat again, but just talking about the hitting and like knowing it and kind of like conquering something would be, I really feel like my best 3 years and potentially my best years were at the ages of 34, 35, 36. I think 2012, I was, what would I have been? 36. To have those years when your body is maybe half of what it used to be, or 60% of what it used to be, but to have those years in production, to me in itself is meaningful to me, because it means that I knew how to do it, and I knew how to get through it mentally, with just type of like kind of an expertise that I never had when I was young. So for me, like I take pride in the fact of I was a good old player, a good old productive player there for a while. I take pride in that, because that's really when you're like stripped down. You don't have the ability to like cover for like things with just how like gifted you are physically or anything like that anymore. You have to be like really good, technically sound in your head and like what you're doing out there, For those listening and watching real quick, BA, this is 34, 35, 36 seasons, 3 straight all-star appearances, 304, 384, 530, 96 homers and 291 RBI. Like that is, when you put that in a vacuum, those numbers, regardless of any age season, are extremely impressive. So
that was what's so discouraging for me, man. Like my body be feeling great. I'd be rolling over to short. And Paul's like, "I'm making an adjustment," or, but like guys like Paulie and we were both fortunate enough to play with Jim Thome for a long time, and you saw the preparation he was going through just to get his body ready for 4 at-bats, like not even to play the field, which makes those last 150 homers or 200 homers he hit even more impressive, because you're like, this guy's in pain every day, and he's going out there and he's kind of grunting through it. And, obviously there's some milestones there, but that was really fun to watch.
When Jimmy first showed up, what was that, 2006, right? I think it was right after the next year after the World Series. And I'm at that point 30. And because everybody's got that 1 year when you like feel it, like, oh my God, this is different than before. For me, it was 2009. I can just remember I was in Detroit. I don't even know. I think it was like maybe in May. I don't even know when it was, but I just remember going, everything feels a little different right now. Like about it was like this moment of like, I feel old. So for me, it was at that age in 2009, for whatever reason. Some guys, it might be earlier, some guys later. But Jim, when he first showed up, like BA's saying, like you'd go in there, at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon for a 7 o'clock game, and Jim's there with like his ankle weights and like his doing all this stuff. And I'm like, man, like this is crazy. Like this can't be necessary. And and he says, listen, and he goes, there'll come a day, because I'm 30 at that point. I'm still thinking I'm fine. Like this will never be me. And he says, there'll come a day where you'll spend more time getting ready to play than actually playing.
Wow.
Meaning you play a 3-hour game, but you're going to take 4 or 5 hours to get ready to play it. And I'm like, yeah, whatever, old man. But but he was right. And sure as hell, that a couple of years later, probably right around 2010 or 11, I say, I got to start I can't just go in and be like, do the things I can't eat the same way. Although I probably did. And, but like, it was like, oh God, it's like when somebody, like when your parents tell you something and you're like, yeah, whatever. And then years later, you're like, shoot, they were right. It was one of those jobs where you're like, man, Jim was right. This is not easy when you get older,
So we've talked about 05 a lot, but obviously with the anniversary, it's going to be extremely popular. They're going to have the weekend this summer to celebrate you guys. I don't want to talk about expectations and stuff. Some of the stuff we talked about in spring training in the past where no one expected this team to do much. We just kind of knew. When did you know that 05 team truly was special? Is there a moment? Is there a game? Or was it all the way to the end?
Again, you got to put yourself back into like the headspace of then and the White Sox and just everything. And I think coming out of spring training, the one thing I can just remember saying, because, JD was with us and JD was on some good teams in other places. And he made some comments like, this is a good team. And a lot of people always reference the bullpen. The bullpen was really good. And so you always kind of have a chance if you have that, so that was kind of a thing I remember people talking about in spring training. Like, this is not a pushover team. Like, this is a pretty good team. But the way that season unfolded, yeah, sure. At the All-Star break, when you're up 15 games, you're thinking this is at least a division winner. I mean, let's be honest. Back then, on both sides of town,
right,
no one was like aggressive enough or stupid enough to be thinking, well, this is a World Series winning team. Like, you would be laughed out of the building if you said it, right? So, but I think it was safe to say, hey, like, yeah, we're going to win the division. And everybody in the back of their minds probably like, okay, is it going to be a one-round thing like it usually is, or like a whatever? That's probably what everybody was thinking. It's probably, we wouldn't say it, but winning the division and getting to the playoffs kind of was like the biggest thing you could do. It kind of was like that, But then when it started to like go down and we started blowing the lead there and things were starting to, and I say blow the lead, we weren't terrible, we weren't good. Cleveland was just so good. But then you start sitting there and you go, oh my God, now it's not even that. This could be something that's talked about years from now about the collapse of this thing. And now you feel the heat of that. So to answer your question, I mean, when we clinched the division, at that point, it's like you see it happen all the time, like in sports. Like, you'll see it happen probably this March, like in March Madness. You'll have a number one seed or something like that. It's a really good team. And they get a huge scare early on, and then they run the table. And you see it like in the NFL, first round of the playoffs. You see it happen all the time where the best team or one of the best teams like just barely ekes by, and then they slap themselves in the face, and then they're like, here we go. And that, when we won that division, I was like, we might not lose a game here, because I just felt like there was so much relief from doing it. And then, but it was all about that first game against Boston. I'm like, you're still facing a good team in the divisional thing. It's like, these are the defending champions, Red Sox. We could come out here and like, it could not feel like the regular season at all. And like, we're totally just forgot how to play baseball. And we went out and just destroyed them that first game. Yep. And I was like, this feels normal. This feels typical of us. So at that point, you kind of like, you feel really good about it. And then, when you get to the World Series, I could just feel that like there was no way that at that point, no matter what Houston had, who was a good team, there's just no way they were going to match the urgency of what we had, because of the whole, like, how long it been since we'd won one, or anybody had won one in Chicago. You could not win at that point. You know what I mean? Like, the urgency couldn't have been met by another team in terms of us finishing that off. I don't think that year. No way.
Well, shoot, man, I think I got called up in early August. Mm-hmm. I jump into this group, and, we had known each other from spring training and everything, but this team's just cruising, and we were going through a little bit of a struggle there as Cleveland started to creep, but I didn't realize how good and what team chemistry was until after those seasons, because you realize, and Paul had taught me at a young age, he's like, hey man, winners win, losers meet. Like, if you're meeting all the time, if you're having those, hey, players only meetings, you show me a team that's having players only meetings once a month, I'll show you a team in last place. So I realized as my career progressed, years after that, like, golly, man, that team was good. We never met about anything. Like, we just argued on the plane and joked around and went to dinner and played the game.
Favorite, take your Grand Slam off the table here. Favorite moment from the playoff run or World Series, whatever it is. By the way, I'm like taking one of the most legendary moments in the history of the franchise off the table.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, nothing compares to the end of it all when you win and at that moment, because to this day, if you played the game, long enough, or you did some things in your career, hit some home runs, hit some big home runs during the regular season, made an all-star game, you did any of that stuff. To this day, we're 20 years later.
Right.
And you almost still have there's almost like a remnants of the adrenaline of that win inside of you still. You know what I mean? Like every day that you exist is like there's this little piece. So the actual catching of the last ball and like the end of the World Series and winning it, there's never been a feeling on the field close to that in any capacity. And it still kind of like lingers in you years later. I could still almost feel the ball hitting the glove. You know what I mean? I can't remember home runs I hit or hits or whatever. You don't remember any of that stuff of I don't anyways, but that moment at the end. But I would say that, winning in Fenway in the first round, again, because there was just all this, I don't want to place pressure, but it just felt like that we couldn't have beat them. And that that was a cool thing to win in such a historic place and to celebrate on their field. That was really cool. The El Duque inning particularly was that's when you knew, maybe to answer your question before, that could have been the moment where you're like, man, that doesn't happen,
ever.
He was, he was just such crafty. He was just gutsy. And to get out of that right there, he just kind of he walked on water there with bases loaded, nobody out, to get out of that with what he was kind of featuring up against the hitters he was featuring against. Yeah, but the end of the World Series, plus you're so tired, right? You're so relieved it's over. It's been such a long run.
And your wife was pregnant, right? Or you just
no, she just had my oldest son
had your oldest,
2 days earlier, or no, maybe 4 to 5 days earlier, but then she had flown out. I didn't even know she was at the game.
Well, there was that thing.
Yeah. So I never have to look. My son now, Nick, who is a freshman in college and 6'3", 240. I don't never have to wonder how far away we are from the World Series when I look at him, because he's looks like a man. So I'm it must have been a long time ago.
Well, shoot, we got to give Owen a quick plug. I saw him in summer 23. We were giving him a little mini tour at Northwestern. He was, just checking out the cage. We were talking hitting, and I saw a video of him the other day, which I know it's during adolescence, and that age gap there is a big jump, but holy cow. The kid, I told Paul, I said, this kid is like a more muscular version of myself in high school, tall, can run. I said, definitely. I go, whose kid is that? But,
yeah, right. Yeah, I had somebody text me yesterday because my son, he works very hard. He made the varsity team as a sophomore, and he's starting in left field. Really good team too. And someone texted me it said a Konerko in left field, and I said he's the only person that's ever been in my family with that doesn't have below average speed, that can actually go run. So. He's another one. He's come faster. He works hard. He's the only one that has played. I have a daughter that's not into sports. She dances. My oldest son doesn't play, and so he's, fortunately or unfortunately for him, he's the baseball player and has to deal with me on a regular basis. But he's doing great. He works hard. Listen, if I don't know anything, I know how to work. I know how to prepare. And this kid works hard, and I'm proud of him. And he's off to a good start. Their team's a good team. They're off to they're 4-0-1, one tie against a very good Arizona high school, high level team. A very good team. And so he's off to a good start. Got some hits in every game and fighting the fight. And it's fun to see.
A few more here with White Sox legend Paul Konerko on the White Sox Recap Podcast. And we appreciate your time, Paulie.
Yeah.
Do you ever, it's not something you would ever think about, and it's hard to even give you this what if scenario, but if that season, the way your contract kind of lined up with the 2005 season and then the storybook year it became, how close were you truly to leaving the White Sox? And, if that season doesn't pan out the way it does, is there a shot that this whole, statue in left field, the number retired, and your entire career as a White Sox goes a completely different way?
Oh, 100%. It's as fragile. It was as fragile. Like a lot of these guys that go through the same free agency thing. It was really one phone call away. I mean, that's it. It was, I mean, listen, when I got to the big leagues with the Dodgers, my goal, I was like, listen, I just want to spend it's a kind of a lofty goal, but it's a simple goal. I want to play 10 years in one spot for one team. Got off to a terrible start. They're like, all right, pack your bags. You're gone. We're trading you. Okay. I go to the Reds and it's like, I want to achieve that goal here. Pretty good setup for me. Got off to a bad start with them. They're like, yeah, not so much. See you later. So then you get to the White Sox and the goal remained the same. So after the World Series, that was my, 6th year in. Mm-hmm. I really wanted to come back. I mean, that was always my goal, was to get to that, because I felt like if you did that, there's so many other things that you would get along with that as the byproduct of that, because whether it's just the relationship with the fans, winning, because most teams in a 10-year cycle win to some degree, right? They become competitive in that block of time. Just the whole experience of it all, I think, in a 10-year situation anywhere with any sports franchise, kind of like you become a thing with that. It's kind of a thing, and that's really all my goal was. It was never statistical. It was nothing like that. Having said all that, I was also old enough to know that you have to be respected for what you do on the field in a monetary way. It's a business, right? So I was also very, I never turned down a deal prior to a season. So like, you know what I mean? And so I come from a good business background in my family and all that. And I'm like, listen, I've never said no. I never turned down a deal in spring training. This team has had every chance to extend me the years leading into it, before the season, in the middle of the season. My phone was always on, never rang. So, okay, the season ends. Okay, well, now we're even. And so I'm going to go through this process, and like you will listen, you can pay now, you can pay later. If you choose to pay later, it's going to cost more. It's just that simple. And so it was like, let me see what else is out there. And then whenever I see what else is out there, you're going to at least get up to the number that I'm going to say that, that I feel like is not, now I have numbers to compare. I never had numbers to compare. This is very simple, sports contract stuff. So to me, it was one phone call away, because it was like, this is what I need to come back, because now I know. And the truth is, it was looking back on it, it was probably
Angels?
the third best deal.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, the Orioles had like a really great day, but I wasn't going all the way over there, to East Coast. Right. But it was clearly the better deal. And the Angels deal was similar, but a little bit better because of a couple other like add-on things. But at that point, again, you now know what your market going rate is. And so it comes to a point. And by the way, the free agent process, you think it's going to be fun and all that. It's miserable, because for me, that's a very regimented, methodical person of how I get ready and where my mind and everything, not knowing until a later point in the off season. It's not fun. Every day you wake up and you're like, okay, what's going to happen today? You like, at least I like, kind of like that, everything to be known. So it just kind of reached a point where I'm like, all right, enough's enough. Like, I'm making a decision like 2 days from now. Let's see that's it. I don't care. I have to draw a line here. And so, like I said, it comes down to, okay, White Sox, you're here, I'm here. Are you going to get here? And if it was a no, then, as Hawk would say, he gone. But luckily, it didn't get to that. But I'm telling you, it was that close, because it has to be, And the White Sox, if they're doing what they should be doing, they should be making it that close, right? Because they have to bring it to the brink to know that they're getting. So it was done right by everybody involved. But yeah, it is that close.
I mean, there's really no choice. I mean, you're coming off a World Series, you hit a grand slam, you give the ball to Jerry. I mean, how much more could you put it? How much more could you put it in his court than what you did? A couple more here. Just Buehrle getting the statue in July. You guys are all coming back for it. I'm assuming you'll be there. When I think about 05, and it might be the best team I've ever been around. That seems stupid to even say, because you guys finished it off with an 11-1 postseason run. But I'm talking about the entire clubhouse. You never knew what you were walking into. It could be guys busting balls. It could be quiet. You guys could have won 5 in a row, lost 5 in a row. It was always the same. But you and Mark you two are synonymous with that team. So the fact that he's getting his own statue feels right. If you had one story you could share here, and I have stories I can't even share on the podcast, give me a Buehrle story that you're like, dude, this guy is unreal.
I mean, with him, different. I think it's just all about, at the big leagues, you got guys that and I'm probably one of them, right? They're so, almost to like a degree of like, there's a, like you need help in terms of like the OCD or like everything has to be just perfect, right? If like you come in the starting pitcher, if someone even turns down their volume of their music, like, a 1 degree, the guy loses it. Now he can't pitch tonight. Like there's such a, I guess a high maintenance-ness to players, right? Because they think that they're big league guys. They have Mark Buehrle. I mean, I think there's something where he didn't throw a bullpen for like 7 years. Right. Like he did not, like, I remember one spring training game, like we went to Peoria, I think it was, and there was something with the bullpen, like they were watering, and he's like, the hell with that. He goes, he just played catch on the foul line, like a position player, and just threw some balls and told the kid, just get down a few. I'll throw some on the flat ground. All right, let's go. Even in a spring training game, I know it doesn't mean anything, but like his ability to really, really care, but to grip it as loose as any person I've ever seen before the game, after the game, but like during the game, even when he came in and was sitting in the dugout, could sit there and have a conversation about like, where you go to dinner tonight or what he was doing, where he was going to go hunt in the off season. And then like the third out would be made and he'd be grabbing his glove, finishing off the conversation as he was going up the steps to then go and throw another inning. Just a different animal than I've ever seen in that regard. Like that also, I mean, there's guys that maybe tried to be like that, but they never were on the same level of like production. You know what I mean? Like they were kind of like cup of coffee, came and went, didn't really do anything. You'd never know who they were. But to be such a great player, like a guy getting a statue type of situation, and just really, because I look at it from the standpoint of like complete opposite of the man. Like if someone even like moved my batting gloves in my little helmet cubby hole, I'm like, who did this? Like I I was like so like rattled by it, you know what I mean? But nothing could rattle him. You could not, there was nothing that could happen that he'd be like, like whatever, I'm still going to go out and pitch. And if he threw bad or get hit around, he's like, whatever. Like he just, that I was envious of that, like makeup,
I do know one logged bullpen that Buehrle threw. I forget the actual scenarios, regular season. It's probably got a rain out or something, but usually the pitcher will go throw like that day, just get some bullpen work, flat ground. Buehrle grabs me and takes me in the clubhouse. It's about 30 feet, maybe. I squat and he's throwing maybe 50 miles an hour, just flips a couple up there. He goes, just tell Coop I threw to you. I said, all right. It was in the clubhouse.
I'm pretty sure,
like, just to give you an idea of like how much deep down he had to care, but it's like anybody, you got to produce to keep playing and all that. But there was one game where like he was getting hit around and was at home. It was like a day game and wasn't going his way, and infield in, and this big left-handed hitter up, and I'm playing first and infield in. So, he comes set and he's kind of looking right at me and I'm not far away from him because the infield's in, and you could just tell, like, he had this look on his face, like, I don't have it. And like right before he picked up his leg, he's like, heads up. And like, like threw it home because he knew like this ball had a chance of like, if they measured exit velocity and was going to be about 120, right down my throat. So he's just like, as he's picking up, he's looking at me, he's like, heads up, and then just turns to throw the ball, like stuff like that guys didn't do, right? It was too serious of a game,
I mean, even the perfect game, like I'm pretty sure he threw a bullpen the perfect game. He said he felt like shit, never felt worse. And then he goes out and does it. And then during the game, he's asking people to talk because he knows what's going on, but he doesn't want it to be different. Even that grand scale of, superstition, he didn't want anything to do.
I asked him one time, how do you hold your cutter? How do you hold that cutter? And I give him a ball and he gets it and he's kind of got it in his hand and he's like, wait a minute, I got to get my glove. He gets his glove and he comes back and he puts it in there and he takes it out and he's like, okay. And he takes it out again. He goes, I don't know. It's either this one or that one. Like he needed his glove and because he just felt it, he couldn't, some guys you tell them like, guys nowadays, right, with these pitching laps, they're like, well, my pinky has 10% of pressure comparative to my, they know every single little thing on the ball. And it was almost like he couldn't even grab the ball and just tell me how he held it. I need to just do it. And then I'll come out. I'll show you what it looks like. And that, again, just shows that he knew there was a lot of different ways to throw a pitch. He never shook off the catcher because I think he knew in his mind, I got great control. And if he calls it here or there or whatever, if I hit my spot, it'll work out most of the time. He didn't overthink that for sure. So yeah, just one of a kind, and, just a great teammate and guy too,
Maybe that's part of the problem is today. There's just too much out there and too much overthinking. But how hard has it been for you? You know, like the rebuilds really didn't exist when you guys played. You know, there'd be maybe a retool, or they'd call a guy like BA up and Aaron would get traded for Jim Thome or something and just keep moving. But how hard has it been to, see what the White Sox have been going through the last couple of years?
Well, I mean, I think for me, it's always because I played there, and it's a little different of definitely a fan of the team, but not, because I played there. The tough part, I think, is, so many people behind the scenes.
Right.
And that the worse it gets in those regards of the wins and losses and what the fans are not coming out, booing, all that kind of stuff. You know that there's a lot of people that you are friends with, that you care about behind the scenes, that are like, it's not great for them at the time. You know what I mean? So that's what I think of. That's where my mind goes. The players, like, you're young, you're in your 20s, you get another year, like, it is what it is with them. But I definitely thinking about the people behind the scenes, the fans that are like the long time, like season ticket holders that are coming to all the games. But listen, I think the retooling every year, I'm sure at some point the White Sox, if they wanted to, sometimes you have to kind of take a big step back. And I think the better question is, they had a good group of guys, and that should have ran it out a little bit longer. And that probably ended sooner than it should have, just from the outside looking in. And then it was kind of a perfect storm of things to then kind of culminate last year, where you kind of just get caught, in this weird, and it's just like a disaster, right? It just went really bad, a lot of losses, all that. And so now the question is, okay, what now? And it sounds like, I'm hearing great things about the manager. You got to like where he came from. You got to like kind of his makeup and all the boxes he checks off, because not only does he look like he check off a lot of them from just how he is and all that, but he's been in winning dugouts and been he's got to probably know it well when it comes to where he wants to get to. So that's good. And you just got to, I think there'll be an improvement this year. I know that's like a joke, because I know people could say, well, what's that mean? 105 losses, 110. But if you watch some of those games, like last year, I watched a lot of them in July and August, man, they had so many games won in the 7th inning, and you could not try to go out and blow games, I don't think, again, like that. And so I think, do I think that they're going to, be a dominant force in the AL with what they have going on? Probably not, but it wouldn't shock me. Nowadays, it seems like it's very easy to go from really good to really bad and really bad to really good. It just, I don't know if it's the age of the players, and we know in our division, in the Central Division, you see, you just saw it with Kansas City, right? They were really bad and they wound up being good. So, Getsy is a good friend of BA's and mine. And if for no other reason, I want to see him do well and see his ideas. I know they've put a lot into the behind the scenes stuff since last year, stuff that might not be out there in the public, so they're doing it the right way. And it really boils down to either you believe it or you don't, right? If you believe it'll get better, then you're on board. If you don't believe it, then would probably take the attitude of we don't care about you anyways. If I'm with the team, and either you're in or you're out, there's really no in between there,
With the money that's out there today, Paul Konerko and the White Sox will win a World Series in 2025. You're a free agent. What's your contract look like?
I don't know. I think it seems like it's moving at I don't pay attention too much to that stuff. And people bring it up to me all the time. Can you imagine this guy? This guy's making, and I sit there and I say, yeah, but I was making 3 times as much as Don Mattingly ever made. And
True.
That's
a great way to say it.
To think, right? Because Don Mattingly's maybe the best player I've ever seen. When I was a kid, he's my hero. So I always, you have to put it all with that, you know what I mean? So but probably 35 million a year, because it's about a time and a half, or more, almost twice whatever somebody was making in 2010 or 12. 15 years later, it's almost about twice as much and maybe a little bit more. That same type of player, seems like it.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate.
There's relievers that are probably almost up to the point of making what I made in 1 year.
Well, JJ, my buddy JJ, he's probably sitting there going, "Damn."
Yeah, he would have. Like I said, it's all relative, and it's but also the cost of living and all that stuff is way up too. So it's those guys have to deal with that. You don't know the difference is the point. You go out and play, and you're certainly not measuring yourself by how much money you made or the guys you played against. You measure it by other ways. So yeah, as long as the guy's a good guy, I hope they make a fortune. When I hear a guy's a dog and doesn't want to work and he's lazy, like I got no time for that. But if a guy's a good guy and you hear some guy, hey, this guy signed a big deal, he's not doing well. Is he a good guy? Guy's great. He works hard. He cares. Like all the best to him. I hope they make a fortune, right? Like, I mean, because the guys before me did it that way, so I can make that money, and so on and so on. I will never say anything bad about the guys making a lot of money.
All right, we're gonna let you go ahead. Yeah,
was the first, in the offseason after I was in the big leagues. His contract was the first one where I was like, wow, like he deserves that, a lot of money. And now I look to his point, I'm like, it's like Dodgers signed utility player for same amount.
More. Yeah.
3 years.
Yeah.
All right, Paul, we're gonna let you go. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. It's been fun.
Yeah. So what's on the docket for the birthday? You dinner guy? What is you low key?
I think I'll pick up my daughter from school, drive her around to where she needs to be, and then later on I'll make dinner for everybody. How's that?
What a win. What a win. Best since you spent about 20 years celebrating your birthday in a spring training clubhouse. What's the best birthday memory you have in a clubhouse? Do you even have one?
Oh, well, the one that sticks out to me most when I was with the Dodgers, my 21st birthday, right? And remember Tom Prince, the backup catcher that played a number of years? Great guy. Like he kind of took me under his wing, and I'd say 95% of that was all great, except probably that night of my 21st birthday. And I didn't travel with the team the next day. I was in big league camp, but like I didn't go on the trip because I think they knew like this guy will be in no condition to play baseball tomorrow. And so anyways, that night I remember, I think it involved like an Outback Steakhouse. It was really high level stuff back then, but I remember shagging the next day because the guys who didn't go on the trip stayed back, and like it was like a million balls in the outfield and like bending over to pick everyone up and throw it in. And like I was just, but I remember that one. But you're absolutely right. Like my birthday, and when you're playing baseball, when your birthday's in spring training, I mean, it's Groundhog Day anyways. And there was times in spring training where, yes, some people would wish me a happy birthday, but it would get to 7 or 8 o'clock at night, and I forgot it was even my birthday because you're just like, yeah. So, once I got out of the game, then it was like I replaced that with just, like I said, taking kids to school and picking them up from school. So I was thinking about a little golf today, but, the weather's been a little shaky, and I'm not really a grinder on the golf course. I don't like going out there when it's windy. So
it's 78. It's 78, a little windy. Shut it down.
Yeah. If the flag's moving at all, it's just too much. I might go out.
It's a wintry mix here, and I'm debating it, getting in 9 myself. That's the life.
Too many good days here to grind it out. Too many good days.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, start thinking about something to treat yourself for your 50th. We appreciate you spending a portion of your 49th with me and BA and walking down memory lane. I know the fans will certainly enjoy hearing this. So always good seeing you. Look forward to seeing you. We're back in Chicago this summer, and all the best.
Yeah, right on, boys. Thanks for having me on.
Later, dude.
All right, BA. Always good to see and catch up with Paulie. Certainly one that the fans should love. I mean, look, I said it to him when we had him on the podcast there. Like, literally my favorite guy to cover, because when you got him, he just was thoughtful, and he's such an easy guy to like because he just kind of kept his head down, put the work in, and the results showed themselves and became, he's a White Sox legend. He's going to live forever. Well past all of us are here. So, what's one of the favorite stories you have of being a teammate of Paulie?
Well, first off, why the hell would you and I ever partner together? Why would you want to be my partner if I can't get some of my former teammates on the podcast? So I know what I'm here for. But honestly though, that says a lot about you. It does, because look, there's been guys that have come in and out of Chicago, and to be able to have relationships with these guys, that's a credit to you. You're a guy. That's why you and I connected 20 years ago. I mean, let's be honest. You're an easy guy to like. Yeah, no, but selfishly too, we don't get to see each other as much anymore. So if I can get them on the phone or on a podcast and, just exchange some pleasantries for 45 minutes, it's really cool. But there's so many great stories to reflect on, but stuff the fans might like or think is funny is on the field. Paul and I always got along so well, but again, he was someone I looked up to. I wanted to always like get his, validation. I wanted him to think I was a good baseball player. And again, he kept me in check if I ever kind of veered out of line a little bit, but I forget who we were playing. I think it was maybe the Pirates in interleague. And I had caught that the last out of the inning and kind of was on my way into the, put my head down, was pointing at the fans, kind of doing some douchey shit. And I got all the way to the infield, and like Alexi Ramirez is like, throw me the ball. Like, that's 2 outs. And I remember, I remember how embarrassing it could be when there's 30-something thousand fans. And you do something really embarrassing like that. But when I got back into the dugout, Paul's like, just catch the fucking ball and get it in. And I was like, damn. And so, but just to go to show you how close we were, by the next half inning, he put his arm around me. He's like, sorry about that. I love you. And I'm like, no, man, like, I get it. I earned that. So that was
accountability,
yeah. And one that always sticks out is, Carlos Quentin, myself, Konerko, we're all swinging by his place to go grab some dinner somewhere around his house. And all 3 of us were just walking on the street casually after a day game. And this group of people walked by, and you could kind of hear them like kind of, who is that? And in my head, I'm going, I'm third on this list of people to recognize. So I'm not even thinking about what they're saying. And some guy or girl goes, oh my God, you see that was Brian Anderson. And I was like, oh my God. So Konerko kind of looked at me and I was like, sorry about it. But for Carlos was having an MVP year that year, and Konerko's our best player. And here I am, like a defensive specialist. So that one always stuck out in my head.
Well, he is just an all-timer, right? Like, all-time dude. He is just one of those guys. Like, he just wants to have a beer and just shoot the shit and just be one of the guys. But obviously, in terms of how he was as a player, very few. Frank, I think it's probably that guy right there, Frank, and Paul Konerko. So the best of the best. Appreciate you getting him on, and I always appreciate being with you, my man, here on the White Sox Recap Podcast. That wraps up this edition, both on YouTube and wherever you subscribe and download your podcast. Stay tuned. We got some thoughts. We're going to have a spring training wrap and season predictions podcast coming soon. And I'm going to give BA some time to prep. I'm going to throw him like 10 questions, and we are going to see how they play out throughout the season.
Can't wait.
Including wins and losses. I'm looking forward to what BA has to say. BA, appreciate you, brother.
You got it.
That's a wrap. Appreciate you listening. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again next time on the White Sox Recap Podcast.